Just kicking on. Get started in a little bit. One more minute. And start dumping down some pixels. So let's see, last time, this is where I kind of stopped. Kind of ran out of time just because probably took on more in one 3-hour session as I could handle. But this was the faction that we were working on. Yes, new puppy. I have a new puppy. That's why I look so tired. But yeah, I'm going to jump back in, see if we can't wrap up this ink work, and then we're going to see if we can paint these guys. And I hope it goes well. But yeah, I got a new puppy, and it's amazing, but I'm not getting any sleep. It's alright. It's okay. Okay, so I'm going to jump back in. So just a quick recap. I wanted to kind of do this once in a while where like we design like an entire faction, and this was really common in video games where you want to design one type of character, like one sort of like race, one family. I always call them factions, and that was really fun because then there was always like the small, the medium, and the larges. And so a couple weeks ago when we were having our last live stream, we roughed out the ideas, and then we started moving through kind of like the small, medium, and larges, and kind of carrying some of the similar forms around, like these shoulders and the eyes, and using the eyes as almost like a counter for like the scale, so you can see it goes 1, 2, and 3. Pretty obvious stuff in that sense, not breaking any new molds, but it's it's nice. It's nice to kind of like touch those things once in a while and have them be, like really clear that, there could even be like a fourth one where it would have like 4 eyes or something like that. But yeah, we kind of ended with this guy. He needs his claws and, his whole hip section and body section worked out. So I was going to jump back into that, and then we'll jump over to Photoshop and color him up. I'll still flat him in Clip Studio. I'm getting more and more set up to do final pieces in Clip Studio, but I still like to jump over to Photoshop, as much as that's probably a bad idea. Alright. So let's just see where we go tonight. How are you guys all doing out there? So it's been a little. I actually haven't opened up this file since we all looked at it 2 weeks ago. So I'm just kind of. I want to work on some things that are kind of obvious at first, and then as I kind of get more familiar with the idea that I was landing on, then I'll start moving on to some of the more complicated structural stuff. But I think I get it. I mean, I did design it after all. Hey, Casper. Snowing? Where are you? Oh yeah, the ellipse tool in Clip Studio is a game changer. Where is it snowing right now? I mean, with everything going on in the news, that sounds like a terrible thing to say, but hey, sleeping dumplings. Alright, so get that logo somewhere prominent that we were putting on the other guys. So they all feel like they're all part of the same club. I'm probably gonna change it, but I just want to kind of like have a general idea of where it's gonna go. It's funny, I can actually see where I was starting to get tired and my lines were starting to shake a little. It's all good. I'll fix my own work. It's hard. It's hard when you're tired to hit some of the more complicated shapes, but oh yeah. Rockies is actually working with a guy right now who's in Toronto. He's been kind of giving us weather updates. It's definitely cold, full on winter up there. We're gonna have like 60-degree weather, North Carolina, this week. So that's gonna be very non-wintery. Two weeks of snow. It's really remarkable that people can actually like do something, live through some of that stuff. I know that once the infrastructure is set up and you're kind of like used to it, it's no big deal. I grew up in Boston, so I'm used to a lot of snow as well, but still, it's always alarming when you hear that much snow. Alright, I'm just going to lay in some of the big shapes first, and then I'll go back and do some details. But, just kind of like these cylinders for the shoulders. I think we'll do something a little bit more interesting for his kind of like rib cage area. Looks like I was going to do something pretty simple, but I think I want to make it like a little bit more like a tractor grill in there. It's really interesting to go back to a piece after so long being off of it. You always end up making much different changes than you would have had you been working on it just in that one time. Go a little bit. I haven't been sledding since last year. We had enough snow to go sledding for a little while. Not too long. Tried snowboarding down my street once too. That was a disaster. That's okay. My son prefers. He's a big science kid, so he's like trying to get us to move on to the metric system. So I'm getting kind of used to it at this point. Doesn't look like that shoulder's wide enough, does it? So I'll just scoot that out. It's a little better. Yeah, we had I have a ton of, like rain when it's like just close to being freezing. It's probably more miserable than tons of snow in a lot of ways, and it's an interesting time to take home a puppy who had never been outside before. So potty training a dog to go outside in miserable weather for the very first time proved very trying. But he's doing good. And then I had kind of, if anybody even cares about this, but I got a Great Dane, and so I had forgotten how fast they grow, but he's already probably put on another half of his body weight just in the week that we've had him. He's already eating one more cup a day of food. So it's been very rapid growth. Yep, we call him Bear. So the dog's name is Bear. Seemed kind of fitting, all things considered. I think that means I can officially write him off too, because now he's like a mascot. But he kind of looks like the bear that I ended up using for my logo. He's got a great big black nose and beautiful eyes. Technically, the color, he's gray, but if anybody doesn't know this stuff, when they name that color, it's called blue. So it just kind of all that stuff sort of started making sense. Hey, Minaj. My daughter was sort of the holdout because she really wanted to come up with some like really interesting name, but they all ended up being little. We have this this test that we do where we have some woods in the back, and I say if I can't yell it into the woods and not sound like an idiot, then we can't, then it's not on the table. When they were little, they named one of our dogs Zombie, and we went with it. Gotta be good to your kids and let them do things like that. And I used to have to yell Zombie into the woods when he was running off too far, and God, I sounded like an idiot. Never wanted to do that again. So every time they came up with a name, I would pretend like I was yelling it into the woods and kind of show them how stupid I looked. Alright, so I'm gonna... I think I have to go back and add a little bit to this guy. Actually, make sure I do it on the right layer. Go back in a second. So I was playing up the whole... car axle vibe for the center part here. That's kind of a cool look for construction vehicles. Alright, and so I'm going to turn this layer down a little bit so it's easier to see. Those were my notes, which I do recommend if you guys ever walk away from a piece, you're tired and it's just time to go to bed or whatever. Just put a layer above everything and just like write notes for yourself. It's hilarious. Yeah, I think I'm really gonna enjoy yelling bear into the woods. Hey Octavio, nice to see you, man. Thanks for coming out. One thing that I'll always remember, like living in North Carolina has always been kind of strange. It's not really, quote unquote, like a home. Like it's always been somewhere where, like, that we moved and never really been like home. But now my kids want to finish school. So anyway, long story. We've never quite gotten used to like how the locals are. They're always pretty hilarious sometimes. And I was out running. I think I was just like walking at the time or whatever, and I use this as an example for like ideation because it was so funny to me. I did a piece based on it, but I was just going down the street, and this older guy, starts flagging me down, and so I walk over. He didn't look too dangerous, and I walk over and like with 100% seriousness, he starts telling me how I gotta watch out for bears. We live in North Carolina. There's definitely bears in the Smokies, and little black bears. Not harmless, but not ferocious or anything like that. Not like grizzlies or anything. But they do not live around us. We live in the foothills, and it's very suburban area. There's no bears here. This guy was so into it. He was warning everybody as soon as he finished telling me about it. And I think he stopped talking to me because I had just like this like dumbfounded look on my face. I could feel it as soon as he stopped talking to me, as if I was like, you're giving me a character right now. Like he was literally like providing a character designer. Your mom's here? Cool. We'll have to hang out sometime. Yeah, we're in North Carolina. I moved out here probably like 10 years ago. But yeah, I was literally like staring at the guy, and I know that it was just because like I was so thrilled that the guy gave me some elaborate story. I ran home and I drew some robot like holding a little monster or something like that. It was like all based on this guy like running around telling all the local critters about danger that was coming. Just cracked me up. They're bears. You gotta watch out for the bears. My cousin spotted them walking up his street. Okay. Cool. Alright, so we got the shoulders in. What do I want to do next? The arms. The arms are the hardest. But those legs need to land on the ground to look good. So let's get this leg going, and then we'll go back to the arm. No real rhyme or reason to why I pick one or the other right now. They're both hard. So you gotta do them both. So on these taller guys, this is like a really good opportunity to have like a slightly more elaborate joint. You know, the small guys, you usually don't want to like overdo some of the like the sort of intricacies. I'm speaking purely from like if I was getting tasked to put this into a video game, you want to keep some of the tech a little simple for the small stuff so that it's a clear read. And then, but I think we'll do for the big guy, because he's got skinny legs, do a slightly interesting joint for the knee. No, I didn't name this studio after that, although, because it does sort of play well, doesn't it? I named this studio just kind of like after. It's not supposed to sound as esoteric as it probably is, but I was just feeling kind of like lost in the woods kind of thing, like, you know, like just not sure what I was doing every day. So I would spend a lot of time in walking around the woods out here and just trying to sort out like what I wanted to do next, and then it kind of just came to me. This is what I wanted to do. I just wanted to kind of like build the things I've always wanted to build, work on projects that I've always wanted to work on, and move away from strictly video games all the time. And it's been really fun. So Lost Bear was really just me trying to figure out what this was all going to be. I think I wanted it to be bare-handed at first or something like that, like bare-handed studios, but that's like whenever you think of something like that, you can 100% that it's been used already. All right, so I hope he's still looking for that bear. I don't want it creeping up in my yard. Actually, I do. I would love to see a bear right now. Although I have a Great Dane, so I'm good. I absolutely love bears. I actually used to get mad at Stephen Colbert for making fun of bears when he was doing the Colbert Report. You can make fun of anything, but you can't make fun of bears. Alright, so I think if you guys remember, I'm just sort of establishing one leg before I move on to the other, because that way I can just sort of like measure off of it as I'm doing the new position. I think I told myself I was going to do some kind of like coil but I think I'm gonna pass on that. That'll just eat up our time. We probably won't get to paint it quite as well as I'm hoping, or get as far with the painting. I hope we could finish the painting tonight. Seems doable. So what benefit would you say there is to starting a company like you have instead of just yourself and your name? There's no benefit if it's just going to stay yourself. I did form an LLC, which I'm not going to give legal advice, but the nooks and crannies of that is basically like in America, it creates a bit of a legal shelter for you to not get sued directly as an individual. If something goes wrong in some sort of contract or something like that, they can only sue the company, which is always helpful. But you can just do that as your name. You don't have to do that as a you don't have to name yourself or anything like that. But I do plan on expanding and working with more people and contracting out, and I don't know if years from now I'll be hiring people, but I'm going to expand the studio. It's not just going to be me the entire time. But the pandemic has really slowed my roll on that stuff. But the idea is to get set up so that I can take on whatever weight of project I feel like taking on. Just kind of bouncing around a little bit here. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, doing these this is like as close to therapy as possible. Is like work on little like robotic details. Just kind of zone out and just make stuff up. I don't know how much Legos were involved in your childhood, but man, spent a lot of time just trying thousands of things out. That was always my favorite thing. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to change the name if it stops being lost at some point. Alright, so I wanted to play off. Let's see, what do I want to do? I can make sure the legs have some similarities to them, so keep it thin like that one, where it definitely looks like the same construction technique, so we'll do that same kind of like trussing in here. I think that's probably got to get rotated a little bit just so it looks a little bit more natural. One thing I always liked about designing inside of a studio and not designing for clients' contract work, because contract work, there's an agreed kind of like end result, like an end product that you're going to deliver. So if you guys are getting into doing any contract work, they reach out to you, they say, like we want 6 characters, 3 characters, whatever, and then you kind of agree on a final rendering pass or something like that of what, like how far you're going to take them, whether you're just going to leave them rough, because they just are looking for exploration, or you're going to take them all the way to final, full render, like something that we might do here. But when you're inside of a studio, excuse me, sometimes you can just do like a quick sketch. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Alex. Puppy's awesome. I just lost my train of thought. Give me 1 second. Oh, so you're inside of a studio, and someone has an idea for something, or you have an idea for something, and you want to pass it along. You don't have to necessarily make it like some beautiful painting. If like the rotation of a hip joint is all wonky because you just couldn't draw that day, that's probably okay as long as the idea is solid. That was always really nice, especially when the idea was a complicated idea and it would have taken a really long time to execute as a drawing, but you were working with a teammate who could model or animate in a way that you could just sort of like iterate on things really fast. I just really enjoyed like sort of like the napkin sketch, awkward drawings, and not feeling like everything had to be prime time ready. And then it was really funny when like the studio would ask at the end of production for concept art for like unlockables or something like that, and you're just like, well, we didn't really do a concept of that character, we just sort of like agreed on a general idea, or we show them like a napkin sketch. Doesn't really show well for that type of stuff. I think as the years went on working on some of that stuff, started becoming more aware of that moment, and so we started doing more finalized pieces, but it wasn't always the case. So what is, of the people who are willing to dump stuff into the chat, what's the preference? Is it video games? Is it television? Like what's the dream? Is it something else? Comics? Doesn't matter. Did you just move the ellipse tool? How did you do that? Yeah, you can, you mean like, obviously, like you can grab it and move it around? Is that what you mean? You can move it, if you click on it, on the axis point, it slides across its main axis. If you grab any one of these 4 blue circles, it will change the ellipse dimensions. And if you grab just sort of like the purple edge or whatever, the ellipse edges itself, you can just grab it and move it around. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Casper. That's what I did. I, for one, can't make up my mind on what I want to do. Just everything? Well, yeah, I feel you. That's kind of where I'm at now. I meant with the arrow keys. No, I didn't do that. I probably just did something quick with my mouse like that. Let's see. For me, it's environment art or keyframes for movies. That's cool. I love the art of Star Wars books. Yeah, I'm in love with the art of Star Wars books. I use them as like when I do portfolio reviews. That's like my go-to, like when you're designing your portfolio, make it look like the Star Wars books. Like that's like the default awesome portfolio is Star Wars books. And I didn't make that big enough. Great. I don't know about you, but I still fall into the trap of drawing something all the way through before I check the measurements. It's a little better. I think you selected the transformed the ellipse on his hip that you fixed. Yeah, if I'm using the ellipse tool, the only things I'm really doing are just grabbing it, rotating it, and adjusting it like that. Sometimes I select the art itself and we'll nudge it with the arrows just like you would do in Photoshop. I don't know if I've done that on this so far. Don't quote me on that. We'll look at the playback. So as long as there's a story, Casper says, I don't care if it's a game or TV series or movie, but I would love to try comics. Yeah, comics. I'm starting to work on some comics, and I sort of start and stop them as I'm sure a lot of people who are novices at it like myself. The goal is to do like a nice big long one. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out some techniques that I want to use for a really long time. And that's a little bit of a rub as well, as like I like experimenting, and so I don't want to end up with one of those comics that the characters look 1,000 times different at the beginning than they do at the end, because you just kind of got used to it. Been down that road before. Comics, though, I love creator-owned stuff, so I think that's, and you just do everything yourself, which there's a lot of appeal for that, but they are so much work if you calculate out the hours. Not quite as bad as 2D animation, but you get my drift. Sorry, just want to make sure I get this right. I just realized I forgot to finish up this knee over here. Okay. I'm definitely going to add some hoses to this to kind of make it more interesting, as if some of the power that's coming down the leg is getting fed by some hoses or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. good news is I actually think we're gonna finish this guy soon enough. We'll be able to get into paint without any real issues. With tons of drawing required, any tips for avoiding wrist injury? I'm suffering from it myself, so I don't really have any like cure-alls, but I'll tell you like the types of things that I do to avoid the fatigue. One kind of like secret reason why I use Clip Studio a lot more than I would almost any other program is because, and I've mentioned it in the past, but not for this reason, because you can adjust the pressure sensitivity on the brushes, it allows you to, made that a little bit too short, hold on. It allows you to change the pressure sensitivity on the curves. Also picked the wrong brush apparently. Okay. So where you're kind of bearing down, like I tend to like my fatigue and my wrist pains come from really, like bearing into the brush too heavily for too long, and all of a sudden I just get a ton of hand fatigue and wrist fatigue. So one is to change your brushes so that some of them, how do I say this? So if you have a brush that is this pressure sensitivity and this is, I'm going to scale them up so you guys can see them a little bit. So that one's a lot lighter than this one, the density of it. And that may seem kind of minor right there, those two lines, but you can see one is darker than the other. And I literally switched between those brushes, and I even have this one, which is really light, based on how heavy I'm going to press into my my hand. So my normal brush is this sort of like 6B, it's on the demo brushes that I put up. But I do switch to brushes that I don't have to, like the one that is darker. I switch to that one when when I'm really starting to get tired and I need to get a heavier mark. And sometimes, but then I switch to the sketch brush, and that kind of reminds me to draw lighter. And I have to kind of like change the way I'm working. I used to do so much 3D modeling that I had like really, really major hand fatigue and wrist fatigue, and to the point where I was wearing braces all the time and really hurting myself. And it was just about like changing it up a lot, drawing back here, drawing with your shoulder, even just trying to like ever so slightly change your hand grip a little bit was helpful. But I don't have a cure-all, because I can honestly say like I'm suffering from some of that pain as well. Right now I'm making probably 4 to 5 pieces a day, and it just wears on you. There's no getting around it. Let's see. I have an education 2D anime. Sorry, I'm reading this wrong. I have an education 2D animation, worked on 2D animator for 15 years. So drawing the comic, yeah, that's the way to go. Same Hey Kyle. Yeah, thanks. The puppy's as cute as anything I've ever seen. I'm super excited. Appreciate it. Smoski's saying, I'm sorry, I'm hacking up your name. Every time I think I can draw, I see one of your pieces and I cry in the corner for 3 to 4 hours. Okay, well don't do that. Come draw with me. That's the entire point of this, is that we can all just like hang out and draw together and not feel so crappy about things. I'm wearing a support for now and some drawing and tennis elbow. Yeah. I've had to take time off from drawing before, and that's the worst because the healing leaves you with the inability to draw. I mean, that rustiness that you feel when you haven't drawn for a while that is a very demoralizing moment. So it's a real big trade-off to have to say, like, I'm not going to draw for a while. But I've found maybe different ways around it as well, where I've tried making different kinds of art, gotten back into 3D modeling. 3D modeling burns my hands like I've never felt. Doing a little bit more graphic work can be one way to do it, I guess, because that's just like it's a very different way of thinking. Let's see if I can keep from overcomplicating this leg so I can actually get this thing done tonight. If I'm not paying attention, I'll just keep like making details. Oh, that's right. We split the foot differently on this one, so I gotta work out the whole ankle thing here. How am I gonna make that look? I think let's work backwards. Just a second, I'm going to go a little bit mute on you guys because I'm just trying to figure out this. I want to figure out this ankle real quick. But I will get back to whatever's going on. Of course, I didn't leave myself enough room, but man, sure, I'm on a different layer. I can get this guy later. Oh, Octavia, are you in Texas? Let me see if I can catch up here. Got the cute puppy. That's awesome. Got the crying in the corner, wearing the support, which sucks balls. It's hard to have to do art for a job during the day, then also work on personal projects. Yeah, it is. I'll speak to that in a second. I want to make sure. And we got someone who potentially lives in... Oh, golly, I'm so sorry, man. Been watching that like crazy. That's terrible to watch. And then it's probably been asked before, but do you have a platform where people can pay for one-on-one sessions, mentoring, or anything like that? No, I'm not doing that. I just don't have the time. I got I'm working full time, so this is just for fun to hang out with you guys and draw and hopefully answer questions. Yeah, I'm working on 2 television shows, a video game, and personal projects right now, and I just don't have any more bandwidth in me. Maybe someday. Oh, hang on, we're doing an autosave here. Alright, I think I'm gonna get those feet a little closer together. So what was I going to get back to? Oh, yeah. So the whole personal projects versus professional projects. I do. I don't know if you guys are following on Instagram. Hopefully, you are. I do commit to a certain amount of time every day now. I hope other people will start doing this, where I work for myself, basically. So I don't work 100% like all day long on other studio stuff anymore. I spend a couple hours every morning working on my own stuff. I'll still put the 8 hours in if I have to, which, you know, a lot of times that's the case. But I still start the day off a couple hours on my own work. So I highly recommend it. It was something that I wish I had done more of. I was always leaving myself till the evening, especially, you know, like during my insomniac time. I was really just doing everybody else's work first, and then just whatever the scraps of energy I had left, I would spend working on my own personal projects, and that's not fair. So now I've switched it around. I always give myself a couple hours to at least warm up, have some fun. Sometimes I do non-fun stuff like accounting or things like that, but whatever. As long as it's for me. Alright, I don't like that joint. Let's do... What did I do? Ball sockets? Okay, let's do that. And then I think we'll do like a just a bigger foot than over there, so it needs like a little bit more support. Otherwise, it's gonna look like it's gonna crumble over under its own weight. So I'm gonna do like a double wishbone thing here. I'm doing that thing where I'm just gonna add things. So we got a wishbone, then we'll do another wishbone. Don't really see the other one over here, just a little bit. All right, that'll work. What sort of projects for TV shows, like development, concept, animation? Development, concept. I like to do a lot of work on pitch bibles, which are like, you know, like what the producers will use or the developers will use to kind of get their projects greenlit. So there's a lot of really fun work there because it's all like fresh development. So I like to do a lot of that. And then I am working on one existing television show, but not really talking about that yet. At some point I will. Yeah, most of the stuff I'm working on is, if it's not a secret, I don't know like what I can talk about, so I usually just don't say anything. So don't take offense to it. I just keep myself out of trouble. Isn't it hard to work on 3 different stories and top that with your own stuff? Yeah, it's absolutely it's really difficult. Actually, what was funny is, had you asked me to do it 5 or 6 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. But when I was working at Insomniac, there was a point where we were doing 3 projects at the same time, and I was on all 3 of them, and I learned how to do it. And it's not always a healthy thing, but it's doable. But it can be kind of refreshing as well, like they're not all the same. So it can be kind of nice to have that ability to switch between them, and just have some variety. Because what I'm going to start on in the middle of the day, or I'm going to start on the first thing that at the beginning of the day is up to me, like what I feel like working on. If it's something like one of the projects can offer that the other projects aren't. But what works out the best is if I can really manage it. Like one set of art will be out for review while I'm working on another project, and that helps kind of keep the ball rolling on a lot of different things simultaneously. The funny thing about concept art is there is a lot of downtime between the clients. They want to sit with them for a while and have meetings about them, and just really make sure that the team is all on the same page with how things are gonna work, and whether the design that you've presented is actually the best design. And they come back with notes, and it's not always just like quick. And it was quicker in the studio, because if someone said like it needs to be red, not blue, then you knew right then and there. But with working with clients, it tends to be a bit more you find out once in a while, like you can. Oftentimes I won't get feedback even within the same week, depending upon the client, just because they really need the time. So I'm gonna put some hoses on this thing. Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, splitting your headspace across multiple projects, it sounds pretty overwhelming. It can be. I think the biggest problem is when you take on a lot of projects that you're not interested in. Every project that I'm taking on now, that is, I try desperately to be fully engaged with it. So like I look forward to working on this stuff. So when I'm developing this stuff, it's not a drag. It's like, oh, I'm working on that today. That's cool. It is a mindset thing. We're all if you're doing concept work for a living, I mean, it's really, really hard work, but you're also really lucky. So you gotta train yourself to stay positive about that stuff. See it as a positive rather than always a negative. I fall prey to that stuff a lot. It does become overwhelming from time to time, and you can't help. You get inside your own head, and you start talking yourself into not doing it ever again, and turning down opportunities. And if that's the right fit for you, that's the right fit for you. But for me, I want to try as many things out as I can. I love working on projects. If someone says they have a project, they almost don't have to tell me what it is, as long as they're fun people to work with. So the hoses are done. Get rid of that. Probably spent almost an hour just working on these legs, huh? That's alright. I still think we can get far enough away. Even if we're just flatting tonight, we'll get flatting. ever take time off? No. No time off. If you mean like taking like little vacations and stuff like that, yeah, but just bring my iPad and draw at night, play with the kids during the day, or if it's raining, like we just we rented a house on the beach a little while ago, and everybody's in lockdown right now, so there's not much you can do. So we just ordered food out, bought a bunch of puzzles, rented a really beautiful house on a marsh. It was really fun. And then when everybody just decided they wanted to have some kind of like peace and quiet, I just broke out the iPad and got some work done. I'm trying to do more and more pro work on my iPad as possible. It's really allows for a lot of flexibility. It's not always possible. The iPad is definitely has its limitations, but it's got a lot less limitations than you would imagine. Yeah, if I hurt my wrist. I do a fair amount of like woodworking and things like that, and renovations on the house and stuff. I love doing that stuff. I always end up like slamming my finger or cutting myself or something like that right on my drawing hand. Never fails. Always. That's always kind of a fun moment where you just realize you're gonna be drawing through like bloody band-aids for the next week. So let's sorry, I'm going quiet on the feet again because I make sure I get these positioned properly. Mentally, I'll be right back. Jeez, protect your hands. No. I used to think that way, like I had to like protect my hands. And you guys aren't gonna like this, but I don't care anymore. I'm just doing it. Being afraid to be able to work on my table saw or build something or, go hiking or something like that because I want to draw art all day long. It used to bum me out, so I stopped caring about it, stopped worrying about it. I'll just go work at Home Depot or something like that if I can't draw anymore. Be alright. I really don't think I can think that way anymore. I love drawing, but I get just as much satisfaction out of like cooking awesome quesadillas or something. Or building a shed. I love building sheds. Although the one that I just built in my yard sucks. I'm so embarrassed by it. I rushed it. Alright, I think we are just closing in on the ends of these feet. Move that foot over a little bit. Toe, whatever you want to call this thing. Scale it up too. Cooking is actually, to kind of be hypocritical a little bit, we have these god awful serrated knives that are just as dull as you can possibly imagine, but like you can like run them right over your knuckles and you'll just barely take a wound. And my wife got me this beautiful knife because she knows we got all sucked into like Forged in Fire and Alex Steele and watching just the whole thing about like forging knives and stuff, and she bought me this gorgeous knife. It's just, it was so sharp, like it probably would have fallen out of the package that it came in, and I won't use it. I won't use it because I'm so clumsy. I'll cut right through myself, and just rather use the serrated knives, save myself. But then I go out and use a table saw. A few details. Over 2 is an extreme sport. Alright, get his legs. Big boy legs done. Get some arms on this guy. Do the arms, or do I do the head? Do the arms. Those claws are... Should I? Okay, so I'm gonna draw the. Looks like the claws are gonna overlap that guy a little bit, so I'm gonna draw that on a separate layer. Let's lay some landmarks down. That. Cool. And then sort of like doing like quick measurements here just to kind of get my placement. I might move the claw in a second. That, and then there's the base. That. Sorry about the sound effects. They are necessary. That should get us one claw. Trying to be mindful of the time here. I don't want to stretch this out too long, but definitely don't want it to be not up to everybody's standards. Microwave is the way to go. Yeah. Oh, I can't even take my, yeah, I got, someone forges knives around here, and they did a really beautiful, handmade blade. It's a kitchen knife for sure, but it's like a paring knife, which is like the size knife I like to cook with. And it's just so razor sharp, it's so scary. I love it though. Like the handle is all like, it's got like the epoxy inlay, and it's like everything you could ever want in a knife. It's beautiful. Hardwood, and I think it has like a little piece of bone in it. Question. I didn't know you did 3D modeling until you mentioned it in a previous stream. Wondering why you don't post those. Oh, because 3D modelers are nuts. So woodworking, 3D modelers, especially Substance and Blender people, but ZBrush people are pretty bad. Everyone's got something to say. Everyone talks shit. Everyone's just super negative. They know better than everyone else. They may know better than anyone else, but it just rubs me the wrong way. I don't care to listen to those people. You know, people who tell me they've been modeling for over a year or something like that, and then, you know, been modeling for 20 years. And you got people just constantly telling you what you're doing right and doing wrong. I got no energy for those people, so I don't post that stuff. There was always, we would do tech locks at the studio where, you know, like you couldn't really take advantage of current tech, and other people would move past you, learning, you know, new stuff, like but the studio needed to stay in lock with what they decided that they were going to use for the tech for that project. And so you'd do an entire body of work based on old technology, and then you'd go and you'd show people it, and they'd be like, nobody does it that way anymore, blah 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 blah. Listening to people talk about Blender online, I'd rather shoot myself. They talk about 3D stuff, like if you know everything in a 3D program, that gives you some sort of like badge or something like that, and yet they still can't make something look half decent. And all the best modelers I've ever met they know like 3 tools in ZBrush, and they're amazing sculptors. It's maybe a little bit of too jaded for what I was trying to tell you guys, but that's why. Yeah, if I don't know if I can't get to the knife that I have really easily, but it is a beautiful knife. I'm jumping around the chat a little bit. Would you consider streaming those? No. No, I'm not gonna do 3D in front of anybody else. I modeled things like I modeled Ratchet and Clank for years. You know, I did the primary characters on those projects. That was really fun. Did a lot of the weapons all the way back to the PS2 days. Love it. Love modeling. Still model to this day. And use it for a lot of different things. Just got a 3D printer. Gonna use that. But no, I don't mean to sound jaded, but I don't have the patience for the tech guys, you know. It just ruins everything. It's not fun. You know, like we're sitting here drawing, we're having fun, we're just making up random characters. It's super fun. There's no, you know, if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, but this is like this. There's no like, I'm not doing anything that like is like a technical prowess that people can be like, that's not how the shoulders would work. Like, who cares? It was fun. That's good times. I will admit I am kind of a dirty modeler. I don't really care about like the really anal retentive modeling style that a lot of games really require. I tend to just kind of do what needs to be done and get it done. But I don't know. Let's see. When's the last time I made a final model? I don't think I've done a final model in over a year. Depressing. I'm gonna hit save here real quick. Don't think I'm like super jaded or anything like that, even though I am. It's just I'm just picking my battles at this point. When you work in a studio, you know, the likelihood of you having to learn a new technology, a new piece of software, it's like every 6 months or something, there's something new coming along that you have to master. And a lot of you know what 3D modeling is like? 3D modeling is like people who like bands, and then they love telling you they liked the band before you liked the band. That's 3D modeling. That's the world of 3D modeling. Everybody wants to get there first, be the best at all the technology, be the first adopter, be the one who did everything before anybody else did everything. Versus just like, is the music good? And when you meet a modeler who just doesn't give a crap and they just don't worry about all that stuff, then those people are just making the best stuff. They're just making beautiful sculpts. I got hired as a sculptor by a little Russian guy at a studio called The Collective, which is no longer. And it was because my portfolio I was trying to get a concept art position, but they needed a modeler. And I was a sculpture minor, traditional sculpture, in college. And this little Russian guy named Alan, who was an amazing Maya modeler, way before almost anybody adopted Maya, because 3D Studio Max was kind of the standard at the time. He hired me, or he said to hire me, because he said, I can train you to use this software, but I can't train you to sculpt. And I've never forgotten that, and I've noticed it, and he's just so, he wasn't that much older than me, but he was just like this wise old man as far as I'm concerned. Like, he just knew something that I didn't know, which was that a lot of people hide behind technology. They hide behind the prowess of knowing how a program works, but they don't really know how to make something beautiful. And that's really important to kind of look for, is like when someone is hiding behind a piece of technology, they need to kind of stop and train and actually remember what actually making something beautiful actually looks like. I'm kind of getting a little esoteric right now, I'm sorry. Alright, so let's just kind of making up how this arm would go here. Making it as complicated as I can so that when I go to draw the other one, I hate myself. Hipsters, yeah. Yeah, the funny thing about 3D software, if anybody feels like they can't learn it, it's a joke. You can absolutely learn it. It's made for dumb people. It's made for all of us. We're all these, idiots. And whether you're talking about ZBrush, or you're talking about Maya, well, actually I'm not talking about Maya, but you're talking about Blender, you want to pick up a video game, like a platform like Unity or something like that, it's the people who talk like that who make it seem prohibitive. And so you never, you go in forums and they use terminology that's like as complicated as they can come up with so that they sound smart, and everything seems so foreboding. What you got to realize is, like, ZBrush wants everyone using that software. They want everybody adopting it. They don't want it to be prohibitive. That program is not actually that hard to use. It's really fun. And it's when you get onto the wrong forums and the wrong sites that people start talking about things in such like heavy details, and I'm going to call it prohibitive language, but basically like language to make themselves feel better about themselves. And then people don't learn the programs. And so you could have, I don't know if I've ever used this example with you guys before, but Kelly Slater, who's like one of the best surfers in the entire world, grew up in Florida riding like 2-foot waves. And had he just like never really had he not had the chance to go and surf big waves in Hawaii, because he wasn't supposed to, he was just some kid from Florida, surfing baby waves, like he never would have known how good a surfer he was gonna be. It's a terrible example, but it's the only example I can come up with right now. So anybody could be like an amazing sculptor if they just want to try out a 3D program and not get hung up on all the language behind it. Hey, I bitched and I drew a claw arm. Who knew? Alright, so let's erase out what we don't need anymore. Goodbye. It's always funny when you draw a bunch of stuff and then you have to erase it out. You don't have to if you're planning ahead, but I think you guys know me well enough that I'm not planning ahead very much. Cool. One more check before I merge it. Always wanted to try ZBrush. Not enough hours in a day at times. One day. You don't even need hours. Just need to open it, put a couple of dents in a sphere, learn what a tool is. I'll say like ZBrush is kind of funny because they've named everything really atypical names. So like their terminology is a little bit foreboding, but it's fine. Try it out. If you love it, you might be like the best ZBrush artist mankind has ever known. You'll never know. Are the pieces personal projects? My new sculpts? Yep. Mostly models that I'm gonna I got a few robots that I want to like 3D print, and I still like building like model kits and stuff. So I'm gonna make some of my own mechs and stuff like that and paint them up. It should be kind of fun. Alright, so that is his elbow, I mean. Yeah, I haven't even gotten to touch my 3D printer yet. I came like 2 weeks ago. Time will come. Alright, so arm, back, shoulder, and then the wrist. I'm just going to be kind of sloppy over here because I'm going to do mostly silhouette for this thing. I could do it on the other guy. Okay. I like the people who are going to skip illustration skills because they're going into 3D. No, that's not how it works. Right? World domination in ZBrush. Seriously, it sounds fun. Definitely will give it a look. Yeah, it's fun. It's the reason I like to push just the kind of casualness of it is like I always remember like when I was learning anatomy. I used to draw from muscle magazines. That was like my training before I went to college, is I would just like buy muscle magazines and draw everybody. And there was always like muscle groups that I never understood like how they connected. And then I took a sculpture class and we had a model, and it was like, oh, I see how the lat goes into the serratus muscles, or how the like how the abs tie in like to the serratus muscles over here or something like that. It was like all of a sudden things start to click, and it's because you're kind of like turning the form, you're kind of finding things, and just like half the sculpts, like what was really great is like, and I think having ZBrush under your belt could be like a good way. I use it for this as well. Like I figure out forms if there's something that I really can't understand. If it's something that I have to draw in a lot of different angles and I don't understand how it actually works, sometimes it's easier to do a quick model of it, and it can be a really quick and dirty sculpt, but it just like gives you a little insight as to like how the form turns in space. So having that skill set just offers you like one more little trick as to like how you can make things that normally are really tough for you to figure out how they work in space, to make those little connections. So I recommend it not as like you should be a 3D modeler. I recommend it as like it's a really cool tool to have in your quiver. Yeah, I agree with you, Virtual SG. Like, you have to, you have to try things out in different ways. Just, I mean, you got to do whatever you got to do to learn, like, how things look. You'll be a better illustrator if you can sculpt a little bit. You'll be a better sculptor if you can draw. That was always, I always laughed. I always was embarrassed, and one of the things that really pushed me as a concept artist at Insomniac was when back on the PS3 Ratchet days, the modelers, some of them are still there, the modelers that were doing the character work, half of them could draw better than the concept artists. They just happened to be hired on as modelers. I mean, these guys could draw. So funny. And you're so embarrassed when you drop them off something that it was just garbage. But they were amazing sculptors. I personally don't put much difference between cooking, sculpting, drawing. It's just kind of like observation and timing, and I don't know, it all kind of comes from the same place. So I don't really you're gonna cook the same way that you draw. I don't know if that makes any sense. Never really had to verbalize that before, but I don't really see the differences between those two things very much. Between any of those, it's just another way of you being creative. All right, claw. That's 2 claws. It's a little small. I'm gonna fix that. Hold on a second. All right, good night, Kyle. Thanks for coming out for as long as you did. Am I gonna bust out the? Yeah, I might do that. I don't know how I'm gonna film it yet, though. That's a big hiccup. Just figuring out like how to do all that stuff. But yeah, getting back into watercolors and sumi inks, and even maybe sculpting a little bit. Be kind of fun. I would love that. I love sculpting. Sculpting in clay is one of my favorite things to do in the world. All right. Get some smokestacks going. I think maybe because I'm going to repeat that form, I'm going to use the help. Whoa, what am I doing wrong? Okay, here we go. Funny thing that happens when you have a bunch of rulers. There's this one hiccup in Clip Studio when you merge layers that have rulers. Then for a few seconds there'll be multiple rulers activated because you'll have activated rulers on one layer, and then you'll have activated layers on another layer, and then you'll merge them together, and technically it doesn't know how to rectify that, so they're both active. So then when you start drawing, you have to just basically turn off all the rulers for a second, cycle through them, and then you're back in business. I like that. I like that a lot. Fried egg is a robot. Okay, so let's not over stress ourselves. Big, medium, and small shape designer like GameStop stuff. Still not 100% sure what that means, but it is awesome. Yeah, there's still plenty to do. We got lots to do. It's only 12:30. Dopamine art. That's awesome. So then we'll just, I think we'll do venting back here. I think we gotta do the proverbial big hose running down through here. Alright, are we done? Holy crap, that would be awesome. Probably not. Turn all the bullshit off. Hide our ruler. Oh, that's the background. What do we got left? This is always where you start seeing all the things that you forgot to draw. Let me save this. Oh, it's saving for me. Alright, so let's move you away from you a little bit. Take all three of them. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flat them. Just because we're low on time, I'm going to flat them the quick and dirty way. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. So I like that my pencils have a little bit of like transparency to them. They're not like fully like nice thick inks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna copy it twice so it gets nice and dense and merge those together. And then I'm going to use the, up here above the layers, there's the little lighthouse. And so then any layer that is associated with the lighthouse, that means that that is going to be the reference layer. And so I can do fills on layers below it, and it's going to look at them. So yep. And I'm just filling it with whatever color. So I think I chose pink right now. So I can just go through and find all my negative shapes. But it just works better on denser ink than it does on sort of the more thin, the lighter inks. Sometimes those cause it to have more bleed. So this is a good way to get started. Is that everything? It's close. Alright, and then I'm going to make a mask out of that, invert it, and fill that all up. And so now my characters are filled. Does that make sense? I know I've shown that before, but that's Clip Studio's fill tool. And there's always like little errors, so then you gotta go through. And you can see how like shaky the edge is, but it really doesn't matter in the long run. You can just kind of fix that. See, like right there, there's one. Forgot to do that. Okay. Yeah, originally Clip Studio was designed to do like manga comics, and it's designed around just being like a really fast workflow. And if you set up your files and just understand how the tools work, you can get a lot done really fast. That looks alright. That all looks alright. See, there's a little bleed. That looks alright. That looks alright. Right there. I'm sure Photoshop will eventually have something like that, but they don't have it right now. Alright, so our base is going to be kind of like a deep gray. Yeah, and that trick is super clean if you're not, like, the brush that I use is really noisy and soft, and so it doesn't do as good a job. But if you are the type of person that does like really clean inks and stuff like that, oh, it's absolutely amazing. I just saw a spot that I'm just gonna hand paint these out. Gotta have my negative shapes. Alright, so now I'll do another layer above that, and I'm going to layer link it down, and I think we're going to do kind of like an orangey color for these guys. Not that orange, I don't like that. Let's see. Yeah, something more like that. Okay. So by layer linking it, I'm not I don't have to remask it. So now I can just go through and start carving out the exposed metal or anything that's raw metal. So like I like to, the very first step on robots I like to do is the painted metal versus the unpainted metal. So we know all that's unpainted. And I think we'll do in here. You can always add back in because I'm using a mask. And just because the hoses are either going to be rubber or they're going to be like cloth, they're not paint, so I'm going to paint those out now, even though they'll probably end up on a separate layer. Yeah, Clip has so many little tricks. It really, I mean, if you're gonna do comics, digital. If you're gonna draw them digitally, I really do recommend Clip because it's designed around that workflow. It has a lot of really fascinating little tricks. At this stage, it really doesn't matter if I've picked my colors exactly right. They just need to be close. See, I think maybe I'll leave that orange. And then the really nice thing is I know that I'm going to be beating the crud out of this guy, so I don't really have to be all that careful with my masks because I'm going to be chipping the heck out of his paint. So if you already know that ahead of time, you can be a little sloppy with your masking. It's always nice. Sorry, I'm making some decisions right now, but I think I'm going to keep the number of painted surfaces to kind of a minimum. Because he is kind of a construction guy. Some. See, I already screwed myself. Yeah. Alright. Oops. What did I just do? Okay. Boston area and CSP. What are the chances? Just gonna make this all gray. Starting to work. Yeah, I think we're gonna be in good shape. I'm already second guessing the orange, but it doesn't matter. Just gotta stick with it for now. Alright, so that guy has his paint job. Now we'll move on to this guy. I always really go right into the stuff that I 100% know is not going to be painted when I'm making those decisions, because you start to understand like what can be left. There's a point where you're like, should that be painted? Should that not be painted? And if you go ahead and knock out all the stuff that definitely isn't going to be painted first, then it's a lot easier to make this decision later. Or so they say. Sorry if flatting is really boring to watch, but hopefully get into some interesting stuff soon. So what's it? It's 1. Oh boy, we might not finish this tonight. Well, at the very least, we got a faction designed, which is cool. Like factions. If I can't get to the rendering stage, do you guys just want me to finish it and post it, or do you want to actually see this thing painted another time, like rendered? Like I want to do like the full paint job and figure out what this guy looks like. But the shading alone is probably going to take an hour or two. Do you want me to wait? Do you want me to just go for it and you guys can see a post of it on Instagram? I would go faster if I could. I would go faster for you. But I'm a little sleep deprived right now, and I don't think I'm going to be able to pull it off. Alright, I'll do a part 3. I won't paint it on my own time. Let's see how far we can get, though. I'm not bailing on you guys. I'm just trying to set expectations. I want to do some like logos on it too, so it'd be kind of cool to design a couple of logos. And then we'll work those into the design. You know, Casper, it just made me think. Let me write this down. I'm gonna design some, and I'll do them with you guys. Design some noise brushes, some chip brushes and stuff like that for robots and stuff like that, and if they come out good enough, I'll throw them up so people can grab them on Gumroad. We could do an entire live stream just on building some of those brushes. Those will be Photoshop brushes, so they're pretty versatile. And I know that there's ways to import those now into Clip. Maybe I'll even delve into that a little bit too. But that'd be like, I know it was you that was asking a lot about like the brushes that I've been using for years, and there's nothing really special about them. In fact, I'm getting a little tired of them. I think developing some chipping brushes would be kind of fun. You only need a small handful to do a lot of the lifting. We'll get these guys done first, and then I'll maybe jump into some of that stuff. kind of need to do a little bit of refresher myself anyway. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like it's pretty easy to do, but when you haven't done it in a while, you forget like all the little things. There's like different ways to even just like saving the brushes and organizing your thing. That's another thing I want to do, is I want to just completely clean out my brushes. I probably use about 10 brushes in my Photoshop palette right now. So every time it loads, it's loading all those brushes, which you wouldn't think is a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's taking longer and longer between my fonts and my brushes. It's taking longer and longer for Photoshop to load each time. A lot of the stamps on brushes now, they're like 2048s, and I don't know if you can go up to 4096 yet, but you can just crush your computer loading those things. Okay, so here's our paint. I'll probably keep having to go back and tweak things here and there, but that's pretty close. Okay. Alright, so then next we'll do the chrome. So that's usually like light aluminums, and I usually do like the hubcaps and some of stuff like that, as if they're like little flathead screws. I think we could probably do like these shields as like a brighter metal. We're gonna mess these up pretty bad, so it'd be nice to have a lighter color so that the soot and everything can kind of lay on top of them. But it's like a nice call out where each one of them has that color there. Yeah, I just go through like on my little pistons, and they were like, oh, look at what I forgot. See? Look at you. Oh, cool. Yeah, well, see, the thing that I want to get into with the conversion for clip brushes is like I really, really like Clip's ability to play with the pressure sensitivity. And then I think a whole separate conversation, a little meeting or live stream would have to be like how to do like stamp brushes and stuff in Clip Studio, because they are wicked cool. It's almost black magic. It's so cool, and you can't do anything close to that in Photoshop. Darks. So I tend to mix these just because I'm lazy, where I do like things that are like dark rubbers and dark metals all kind of like in the same pass. Just lazy, but it only comes back to bite me when I'm trying to isolate highlights and things like that to act differently on rubberized areas versus like an area that I would consider like a shiny metal, and then I'm only loading one selection. But for the most part, it never really becomes an issue. can see why I did the paint layer on top of everything, because then I can just be really sloppy underneath it. And then once we go in and kind of like add all the soot and grease and everything like that, this thing's going to start to really come together. Soot, dirt, chips, logos. You just keep covering it with stuff until it looks cool. And then because we want the eyes to pop, let's make the frames nice and dark. That way when we put the lights on them, it'll be even more poppy. These wires, huh? Alright, and then let's do their lights. So this isn't the color I'm going to use, but I always like to pick like a nice bright color so I can kind of get the idea, and I'll find the color later. Probably going to be like a teal blue, I think. Teal blue tends to work pretty well with orange. Cool. Glad this is working out. Shape logic. Yeah. See? Teal with orange. It always works. Alright, that's cool. I love that. And then he's got his little secondary eyes. For now, I'm going to make this a secondary eyes blue as well, even though I think I'm probably going to make them like white light or something. What else are we doing tonight? Okay, so we'll do the secondary paint layer. By that I mean, so what I want to do is I want to pick a color that's similar to orange, like a darker orange or something like that, to do some sort of like inset panels, but it's close enough to the orange where it doesn't feel like it's not part of the paint anymore. So how am I going to do this? So just do it the old-fashioned way. So I'm just going to use a slightly darker orange, I think is how I'm going to do this. So after my save recovery. And then I'll use this mask to start with. Is that what I want to do? Yeah, do it this way. So like, do like a trim on the edge of this thing. And this is where you can start designing again, because you can do like patterns. And then like these things can be the secondary orange. And these little things, they help tie all the characters together. And I don't know. This guy's visor is definitely going to be dark orange, right? Probably some little caution stripe thing on him. Maybe we can make their boots like the dark orange. And we'll just like reverse out something, just keep it a little interesting. So yeah, like that, and like keep finding these little spots. I don't know, does that look good? That looks alright. I'm gonna change it, but we'll see. What did I lose you on? Did I lose you? Alright then. So he's got the little shoulders. Same way as the other guy. And then this guy has the same thing. Alright. So now with that color, I mean that one's working pretty well, but you can always like now go through like in hue sat, try different things out, or like see what the secondary color looks like. Like that red looks pretty badass. So like just trying things out, but still trying to keep it like within the family. And then I usually have like a details layer of things that just like aren't worth masking out on their own. Just random little things, little lights and decals. I think we're probably going to do a custom decal for this guy for this, but for now I was painted in. I don't really like the yellow with this orange, so I'll probably go more the white. Yeah, it's just starting to look like he's Hot Ride Flames. Try one other thing. So then we'll put a logo in there and some other barcodes and doodads and stuff. I think you guys are on your own tangents right now, or I just have no idea what's going on. So we got some like tape. Tape on you. I didn't put tape on the big guy, so we'll work some of that in. Like these little repairs. Go back and ink these later, or in a second, I mean. And then, so that is them pretty clean. And I think even though I'm going to paint them in Photoshop, no, I'm not gonna chip them now. I'll do the chipping pass when we get to painting them. It'll be more fun. You can do like I always say, like I like to do the chips by hand at first, just so it has like a nice hand touched quality to it, but then we'll use the noise brushes and chip brushes and stuff like that to kind of get a little bit more of a sophisticated look. I like the way the two things tie together. Maybe for these lights, I think if we did like an orange light, like a bright orange light, it won't stand out that much. That way their primary eyes are the biggest read. That'll be cool. And yeah, that's kind of the stopping point, because the next step is just chipping the crud out of them. Getting all the soot and everything going on them, and then laying in the shadows and highlights and everything, and that'll do them. So I think, no, it's a little bit early. I think that's where I'm going to stop it tonight. Unless you guys have any specifics you guys want me to jump in on. Okay, yeah, so next Monday night I will finish these guys up, and then the Monday after that we'll do some brushes, and I will I think I'll draw something up ahead of time, like another little robot or something easy, and that way like we can try out the different chip brushes and design some that are really pretty good, and that'll be kind of fun. And then I'll just make those brushes available to whoever wants them. And that should be cool. Yeah, these guys are like walrus crab construction worker guys, right? It's funny how they kind of like took on a little bit of life of their own. The painting I'm gonna do in Photoshop. I think I'll do all the painting in Photoshop. I'm just much more comfortable doing a lot of that stuff in Photoshop. And because most of my brushes that I'm gonna use on this are already set up in Photoshop and I haven't moved them over yet. But at some point it'll just be the same no matter what. Yeah, you too, man. Have a great night. And Sleeping Dumplings, thanks as always for coming out. Much appreciated. And then as always, if there's any chance you guys can hit the likes on the streams, just to kind of keep those things going. It gets the eyeballs on it. And that's it. Alright. Thanks, Casper. Thanks, Nick. Alright, I'm gonna go play with my puppy. But I will I'll post this video up in case anybody wants to scrub back through it or whatever. And then I will catch up with you guys next week. No problem, Manosh. There's these. I post them up after every single one, so you guys can always have a chance to just kind of put them on twice speed or whatever and just scrub through them. Thanks, Britt. That's an awesome. Really appreciate it. All right, I will catch up with you guys next week. I hope you guys have an awesome week, and you guys make awesome stuff. And I'll see you then.